بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
Assalamu alaikum. It is Thursday, the 27th of January 2022, and in our series Reflections on the Holy Quran, this is broadcast number 295. And in the last few broadcasts, we've been looking at the meanings of the words of chapter 2, verse 97, and this is the 9th broadcast in looking at the meanings of the words of just that verse of the Holy Quran. Just to remind you that the Lahore Ahmadiyya community was created by Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Sahib, who taught us that although other Muslims want to bring a prophet after the Holy Prophet Muhammad, but the Holy Quran says that the Holy Prophet is Khatamun Nabiyyin. And the Holy Prophet explained this by saying, La Nabiya Ba'di, there is no prophet after me. So now no prophet can come. And he also taught that some Muslims say that part of the prophetic revelation is missing from the Holy Quran. But this is totally wrong. All the revelation received by the Holy Prophet Muhammad is in the Holy Quran. And he also taught us that other Muslims believe that many verses of the Holy Quran have been abrogated. But this is totally wrong. No verse of the Holy Quran was, is, or ever shall be abrogated. And this leads us to an important aspect of Islam. And that is obviously these are differences. But the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that if one reciter of the kalima says to another reciter of the kalima that you are a heretic, you are not a Muslim, then it is the person saying it who's the heretic and who is not the Muslim. So despite these differences, all those who recite the kalima must regard each other as Muslims. And an important aspect of Hazrat Saab's teaching was that jihad is a fundamental duty of every Muslim. But its definition should be taken from what the Holy Prophet Muhammad said jihad was. And when coming back from fighting, the Holy Prophet said that Muslims returned from the minor jihad to the major jihad, and then went on to explain that the major jihad is jihad bin nafs, jihad to control your own feelings and desires that may lead you astray. With that, let us turn to chapter 2, verse 97. which says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل من كان عدوا لجبريل فإنه نزله على قلبك بإذن الله مصدقا لما بين يديه وهدى وبشرى للمؤمنين. Say, whoever is an enemy to Jibreel, for surely he revealed it to your heart by Allah's command, verifying that which is before it, and a guidance and glad tidings for the believers. Lil mu'minin. So this is the word we are going to look at today. So let me, if I can find them. There we are. My notes. So this word has two parts, two segments. One is just the first letter, L, Lil Mu'minin, and its triliteral root is Hamza Mim Noon. And words which are made from this root appear in the Holy Quran 879 times. And there are 17 different words. Or another way to put it is 17 different forms of this triliteral root. 537 times it says Amana. And 202 times it says Mu'min. And 45 times it says Iman. And 22 times it says Mu'minat. And 20 times it says Amina. And 14 times as Amin. And 10 times as Aminin. And then fewer times than that. So, what does it mean? The basic of this root, the foundation, is being in the state of free from fear. Peaceful, satisfied, without fear. And there are three sort of basic meanings. One is that it's the opposite of dishonest. And it means contentment, peace of heart. And it also means someone who verifies something. So, Amana, and that is that you act in such a way that someone else then becomes quite certain, satisfied that he is at peace. You provide that person with peace to the extent that you accept the responsibility for his safety and security. We have the old example from Islamic history that Muslims had taken over this city, and in return for jizya, the defense tax, they had guaranteed peace and security to the inhabitants of that city. And unfortunately, Muslims couldn't provide them with that security. And they had to retreat from that city. And before they retreated, the Muslims called the leaders of the town and they said, well, here is the money you paid us. And because we have not been able to provide you with safety and security, we are returning it to you. And this is how you can see Muslims set an example of how you can depend on them for your safety and security. Once you had given someone your word, religion, sect, whatever, nationality, had nothing to do with it. Once you'd given someone your word that you're safe, you'll provide them with safety and so on, that was it. And although I'm not exactly a fan of Taliban or Osama bin Laden, this is one thing the West failed to understand about the Afghani culture and so on. That it was ingrained into them that whatever sacrifice you have to make, whatever death or destruction or mayhem may overtake your society and your country, once you've given an assurance of safety and security to someone, you cannot go back on that. And then from the other side, it also means that this person depends and trusts someone. And one aspect of that, of course, is the fact that these people are entrusted with valuables. You remember the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that one thing he was worried about was that despite the fact that Quraysh of Makkah regarded him as very badly and so on and so forth, yet many of them had still entrusted him with their valuables. Now look at this. Religion, sect has nothing to do with it. The Holy Prophet Sallam was a Muslim. These people were non-believers, and yet they had so much confidence in him. This is what a mu'min is, that they entrusted their valuables to him. And look at him. His life is in danger. He's trying to escape. But what is the last thing? What is the last action that he takes? He makes sure that everything given to him in trust is returned to its rightful owners. At a time when his life is in danger, what is he doing? He's making arrangements for all those things to be returned to people. And this is why Hazrat Ali Raziyallahu Ta'ala was left behind to complete that. Naqatan Amun is that female camel that you can trust, that she will take you to your objective. She's not going to collapse halfway to Damascus or wherever and leave you stranded. So a mu'min is someone who gives this guarantee of safety and security and peace to someone else. To the degree, you trust him to the degree that once this person says, you have my guarantee, then you don't have to worry. You don't have to fear. Because, the example I gave of the Holy Prophet Muhammad. And he is really guaranteeing peace. And if all of us did that, we'd be guaranteeing universal peace. And then we have amanatan, which is something that you put in trust, something that you entrust to someone. And that is why I said earlier on that this is the opposite of dishonesty, because it has to be an honest person. You have to be able to depend on them. So amanat is something that you entrust to someone else. And then we have Amin. Amin is someone upon whom you can depend. Baladin Amin, chapter 95, verse 3. That is the city which guarantees safety and security. If you replace Baladin with Maqaman, that's the place which guarantees you safety and security. And interestingly, the Holy Quran in chapter 36, verse 162, refers to the Holy Prophet Muhammad as Rasulan Amin, which means that he is the person who guarantees you safety and security in the hereafter, in this life and the hereafter. You follow his instructions. I am Rasul Amin. I am the messenger on whom you can depend. And we have the Holy Quran gives the example in chapter 16, verse 112, that God gives the example of a town, a city. And they were living peacefully. And they had plenty of food and all these things. But then they showed ungratefulness. And they lost God's favors. And then they suffered from fear, and they suffered from hunger, and so on. An interesting reference is in chapter 15, verse 82, and it says, it talks about people who, to protect themselves, to guard themselves, they make, or they live in, and they cut out homes from the rock. And it was in 1920s, I think, that, it was from 1880 or so onwards, that people started finding places in Jordan where they found that, living places had been carved out of mountain, because obviously these people were afraid of an enemy and so on. And a lot of them were Jewish places, and this is where they found these clay pots with parts of the Old Testament and so on hidden in them. And that reminded me of a place in America, although unfortunately I'm forgetting its name at the moment. Well, a number of places actually that I went to where literally people had done exactly the same thing. They had cut out mountains and made a place for their tribe to live. And they had interconnecting openings and doors and all manner of things. And I thought, gosh, how would the Holy Prophet Muhammad know this, that in America there are people who actually literally cut mountains? Indeed, how would he have known that even people in Palestine had done that? I mean, he wasn't an archaeologist. These people, these places where these people lived were discovered only, in the last 150 years. And yet the Holy Quran refers to it. But more amazingly than that, it's not just there, but very far away from that place, from Palestine, from Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, but it's just a desert, isn't it? You have a few palm trees and a few oases, and that's about it. Although there are some hills and so on, I'm not saying there are not any hills. We talk about the hill of Uhud, where the second battle took place, and all this kind of thing, and Safa and Marwa. But what I'm talking about is these huge mountains where people had carved out places for their security. Now, this word is also used in the Holy Quran in the sense of business dealings. And the Holy Quran says that what you should do in business dealings is write them down and get witnesses to verify it. And we don't. I mean, we're talking about, being without fear and, being content and at peace and all this kind of thing. But that is only if you follow the guidance of the Holy Quran. A guy came to me, he started a business with his brother. And he came complaining, saying that, I do all the work and my brother doesn't do anything. He's lazy, he turns up at work at 2 p.m. and so on. And all he does is he just takes money out of the till. So, I want to sue him. So I said, yeah, fine. Can I see the contract, please? He said, what contract? I said, the contract that you made with your brother. Who will do what? Who will start work at what time? And he said, well, I'm very sorry. How could I ask my brother to enter into a contract? He would have said to me, don't you trust me? And, I couldn't say to him, no, I don't trust you. So I said to him, what are you going to say to a judge to give a case to give a decision in your favor in this case? Aren't you going to say that my brother is a liar and a cheat and dishonest and so on? So you're quite happy to do that now, but you couldn't get a contract written to make sure that this situation doesn't arise. But can you see my point? That neither of the brothers would have had any fear of losing any money if they had written everything down. And this is the thing that we do over and over again. We don't follow God's guidance, which says that if you do this, then you won't have to worry. You'll be at peace. You'll be content. That's what a moment is. That's what a moment provides. And you can really talk about when God says in later on in Al-Baqarah that they all believe in Allah. They all have faith in Allah. So you know this includes to accept Him, not to deny Him. But it also means to verify that He exists. There's one thing you can do. You can accept something, but just keep quiet about it. In Islam, believing in Allah means you accept Him and you tell others that there's only one God. You never deny Him. And you have confidence, you trust Him that what He's saying, what He's doing is for your benefit. And you obey Him. You obey what He says. And if you do all of that, then you become mu'min. Then you become trustworthy. Because you will do the right thing, because it is the right thing to do, because God has said it is the right thing to do. And no other consideration will enter into your calculation. Give you an example. God says, give true evidence, even if it's against your near and dear ones. Now, you're the only one who knows for a fact that your son has committed a murder. Your son says, I was at home with dad. He was sitting watching television. Now, you know he wasn't there. You don't know where he was, but you know he wasn't there. But that will be construed. Your denial that my son wasn't home will be construed as evidence that maybe he has committed that murder. What will you do? I'm certain that in 99.9999999% of the cases, love of children will overcome doing the right thing. Love of children will overcome what God says in the Holy Quran about giving true evidence. So, there are a number of things on which if you believe and on which if you act, you become a true believer. That is, you believe in Allah. You believe in the hereafter. What is hereafter? That one day you'll be held accountable for all your deeds. You might get away with it in this world, but there's another world. Life is a continuance. You believe in angels. What are angels? One aspect of angels is that it's what holds this universe together, despite all its contradictions. And angels are the beings responsible for operating the laws of our birth and our death, and communicating to us what God wants, and so on. And what is Kutab, God's books? They need not be books that you see on the shelf here. But the guidance that God gives is called God's book. And of course, people who bring that guidance. Because if you don't believe that there's anyone who can bring this guidance, why would you believe the guidance? So in chapter 2, verse 177, it's mentioned as in a positive way. And then later on in chapter 4, it's mentioned in the opposite way. That those who deny Allah and his angels and his books and his prophets and the last day, then they go astray and they go further and further away from the right path. And that is very, very important. And people forget that. And we just believe in these things as, theory, as air. Not that they're practically correct. Remember, in saying this, God has said that I have made subservient to you all the angels, all the forces. This goes back to the story of creation, when God said to angels, bow to Adam. What that means is that God has put in you and me the ability to master these forces, to use them for good or evil for ourselves. But when we say that we believe in divine guidance, we accept the fact that despite all of that, there are certain aspects that we will never be able to discover for ourselves and for which we need divine guidance. But remember, there are people who say, well, God used to talk to humans, but now he's stopped because the Holy Prophet was the last prophet and so on. Yes, the Holy Prophet was the last prophet. Yes, God will not send new guidance. But take an example. There is a law on the statute books. In 1850, it's interpreted in one way. In 1900, it's interpreted in a different way. In 1950, it's again interpreted yet in another different way, and so on. The law is the same. Like the example of death of Jesus. So Sayyid said Jesus has died. Other Maulana Muhammad Hussain Batalvi Sahib said no. He's sitting up in heavens. They're both great scholars. Who do we believe and follow? And this is where Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad came in. He said, God has told me that it's written in the Holy Quran that Jesus has died. Now God has told him, that's the difference. This is before, it was just one man drawing his own conclusions. Again, to go back to the statute, one barrister interprets the law one way. They're in the court of law. His opposing counsel interprets it in a different way. But it's the judge who decides. And that's the point. This is why God still continues to communicate with human beings. No new guidance as such is required, but the interpretation of how to apply that guidance in our own lives, in our own times, in our own country is required. With that, we come to the end of today's broadcast. I have gone slightly over time, but there we are. So I take my leave of you with the prayer that whoever you are and wherever you may be, may Allah keep the whole of humanity safe and sound and free from harm. Assalamu alaikum, Khuda Hafiz, goodbye.